Hey everyone!
It's time for another episode of What We Read Season 4.
That is right. We've been doing this for 4 years now, I guess.
I know, right?
That is magnificently crazy.
This is the first of our festive episodes, clearly.
That's true.
With the red and the green and the tinsel back there.
Right, and it is a bit of a deviation from what we usually do because I'm going to start off today.
Yes,
in which case I will also bring us to a close.
So what are you, talking about today?
So we're going to start with Jason Aaron's run of the Avengers. I want to say volumes 4 and 5, specifically revolving around the following things. Because, comic books sort of tend to have like collected editions, and that's sort of how I've been reading it, even if Marvel Unlimited, by the way, for those of you who have been following, is finally releasing comics from 3 months ago. That's right. It's not half a year's kind of a party.
I think you mentioned in a video you were going to check if you had to pay a little more for that access.
And I didn't have to, or at least I don't think I was.
So far.
We'll find out when I build every year. But so far it's been pretty cool. And they've been releasing stuff from 3 months ago, which is ironic for me to bring that up because technically this particular of the Avengers happened in 2018. A lot of reviews online that I think have said it better than me. But my personal take on how this particular run of the Avengers is it is bananas. Like most Avengers runs.
Like most
in between
comics. I feel like you say that about a lot of comics.
That is true, though. Comics do tend to be a little crazy.
But what makes this especially bananas?
Well, it's a lot of disjointed sort of stories to sort of just... Okay. They try to sort of bookmark properly within like 6-issue trade paperbacks or what have yous. And so there was a crazy thing called War of the Realms where there's a bunch of Asgard stuff, and by Asgard I mean like the 9 realms or the 10 realms or whatever, like however way you want to slice up the universe according to Thor. Okay. I don't know why I did that, but you will find out in a bit, because they basically took a little bit of the aftermath of that. This is the particular time and era in history where, as usual, New York, among many cities in the world, Ground Zero for frost giant attacks, that kind of deal. So that war spilled over to Midgard, and then we have a little bit of, I want to say, I'm calling them the Discount JLA because they're called the Squadron Supreme, which is some weird concoction of a Mephisto-influenced Phil Coulson. Yeah, I know. I wasn't too happy about seeing Phil either in the clutches of evil, or at least that's what it looked like when I was breezing this, through this series. I like the stab at the JLA. Okay. It's weird to see JLA knockoffs in the Marvel universe, but there they are. And they are the new Avengers or whatever that is. All right. While the Avengers are considered like threats, or as usual, the story is which leads me to the whole. I love Eastern storytelling, and by Eastern I mean anything sort of like this side of the. I don't even know if that's really East, but because they tend to make stories just end, with the exception of One Piece, which is still going on in Dragon Ball Z. Stories tend to end, and they have to from a comic book perspective. So I want to sort of bookmark that piece where that's what you get when you just keep letting stories go on and on. Suddenly you're the bad guys again, and then you're the good guys, and then suddenly you're the bad guys. It's basically cyclical. And you can get away with it because that's a way to get new fans in, and they're like, oh, this is my thing. But then for the rest of us who've sort of been here for a while, it's like, is there Civil War again? They literally had Civil War 2. Like, for lack of a better word... They called it Civil War 2, and this time between Tony and Carol. So with War of the Realms, and then suddenly with these Discount Avengers and the Avengers being sort of difficult or not necessarily on the side of good. What I did enjoy, I feel, was a great deviation from so they focused on one of the Avengers in their sort of story, was the Ghost Rider arc. Now I love that. Oh, by the way, Blade is in here. Yeah, you heard me. Blade, like Wesley Snipes' Blade, Mahershala Ali very soon, hopefully, eventually. So that guy's in because it is a Ghost Rider sort of story. For those of you who may have seen Robbie Reyes as the TV Ghost Rider from, I keep using the air quotes. I don't even know why that's.
I think you just like doing
I just really do. It just feels like I'm making a point that it's more than just one side. But with Robbie Reyes on TV, this was his arc. The Hell Charger, which is the car, sort of gets possessed and nobody knows what's going on. And now they got Blade and even Damon Hellstrom. So it's really a crossover from all of the TV stuff moving into sort of like the main thing. And it's great. I love that. They had to go to hell. A bunch of other Ghost Riders came in. In fact, you see a whole ton of Ghost Riders. And I honestly believe that that was a highlight of volumes 4 and 5. I've been told by some of you who've been sort of commenting on my Goodreads that, hey, you're gonna want to read the rest of the stuff that's gonna happen after volume 5. So I'm like, that's there because Marvel Unlimited. So yeah, it's not the Avengers arc I would throw at people if they want to get into the Avengers. I am still sort of partial to the first Civil War and Secret Invasion and Siege. and that was always cool. Not so much Dark Avengers, but so those classics, and that would be the last set of air quotes, until it's my turn again.
That's a sneaky way of throwing it right over to me. Okay, so I am in the middle for this particular what we read because I'm only talking about one specific series.
And what series?
There are 2 novellas, a pamphlet, and 4 books that I read in this series.
It's pamphlets anymore.
So the 2 novellas are The Pale Dreamer, which is book 0.5. So technically, if you want to read things chronologically, that one comes first. And then the other novella is The Dawn Chorus, which is book 3.5, which will come after another book. The pamphlet is, it was a pre-order thing that they had for the second book. So cute. It is a pamphlet called On the Merits of Unnaturalness. This is actually a piece of literature that is referenced in the book series. And the series in question is the Bone Season series by Samantha Shannon. So the first book is The Bone Season. The second book is The Mime Order. The third book is The Song Rising, and the fourth book, which is out on the 26th of January, is The Mask Falling, and this is an arc of it.
Very cool.
So the Bone Season series, I'm not going to hold them up because they're a little too hefty, but
I can.
Okay, if you want to hold them up, great. The Bone Season series is a fantasy dystopian sort of series that is set primarily in London, at least in the first book, specifically in Oxford actually, not so much London. It centers around a main character named Paige Mahoney, and in this world, people can be clairvoyants. And Paige is one such person, and she happens to be of the highest order of clairvoyance. Early on in the book, she's captured and taken away to a sort of, I guess, I don't know what the right term is, because it's not really a camp, but it's sort of like a place where voyants are gathered by a particular race of people. And while she's there, Paige uncovers the fact that there's more to clairvoyance than she thinks, and there's actually more to the way that the government of London at the moment is currently run, because it looks like the people who are actually in power are actually nothing more than puppets on a string. And so that kind of unravels throughout this book. In the second book, it explores more of the world after the fallout of what Paige and company do in the first book, and the series goes on to be getting successively more and more, I guess, there's more and more revelations dropped and more things to learn about this world. And I read the first 3 books around the time they came out, maybe a little earlier because I read them all as review copies because I was very, very lucky and got to do that. And I have been waiting for the 4th book to come out for a very long time. I think the 3rd book came out in 2016, so it's been like 4 years. So I thought, you know, I have to refresh myself on this series just to, you know, have all the details in my head, remember all the characters, see how we get to where we are in The Mask Falling. And it was so much fun and so stressful and so exhilarating just to be back in this world. I knew I loved the series and I have such fond, like, feelings for it, but I underestimated how much until I reread the first book, and I was like, oh, I really still love these characters. I think Paige is an incredible character. She's so complex, and you really get to see her grapple with a lot of things as she's, you know, discovering the truth of her world and her country and clairvoyance and all of the crazy stuff that's going on. And it's also really interesting because back in the day, like, the first book for me was a little bit rougher at the start because you get a lot of information thrown at you at once, and I think it helps a lot that I'm more well versed in this world and this series now, because I'm like, I don't feel that at all. I think this is great. And I had forgotten how much the plots of each book are super compelling. Like, every single one of these books is so good on its own, and they also serve the purpose of, like, doing the thing like we often credit Shannon Messenger with, which is like opening up the world to make it bigger and bigger with each book. Samantha Shannon does the same thing with this series. Like, you start out very insular with the Bone Season because it happens at a particular, like, small, like, place. And then it gets bigger in the second book, way bigger in the third book, and the fourth book you're in a completely different, like, area of the world. And it's so fantastic because it gives you such a, I don't know, widespread view of everything that's going on. I like the whole idea of clairvoyance and how Samantha Shannon has, you know, made that come to life in her book. That's really great as well. It's just such a great combination of things. Like, it's strong character work and it feels very realistic. The relationships also feel very realistic because they're not perfect, and they have their own complications, both internally and externally, that are, you know, making it difficult for the people in said relationships to maintain them. is what I want to say. And then the plots are so much fun and so interesting. Stressful as all heck. Like sometimes I'm like, the entire time I was reading it, I almost regretted it because a lot of like very difficult stuff happens to Paige and the people she cares about, and I'm just like, this is so stressful. I don't know what's going on. There's so much to be taken away from these books, and honestly, if you're in it for a good story, if you're into like this sort of fantasy dystopian vibes, because it's very much a fantasy dystopian vibe in the story, because there is a fantastical element to it, but it's also set in a futuristic version of our world. So it's that combination of things, and I really like that. I think it's unique. I don't think I've ever read anything quite like the Bone Season series, and I love it to pieces. Can definitely say I highly recommend checking it out. You have time to read the first 3 books and the 2 novellas and the pamphlet, because I think you can also get that on ebook now before the 4th book is out. And let me tell you, it is worth the wait for this 4th book. I have been waiting for so long, and it just paid off so beautifully for me when I was reading it. I really, really enjoyed the time I spent immersed in this entire series. I think it was like a 2 or 3 week period where this was all I was reading. Sweet. And it was mind-blowingly good, and I'm so glad I decided to binge reread everything and then go into the Dawn Chorus, which I hadn't read yet, and The Mask Falling. So very excited, very much recommend checking it out if you haven't already.
Awesome. Alrighty. Well, on that note, one more set of comics that I would like to talk about, and then one more book, and that's it for this episode. So again, I mentioned Thor earlier on.
Oh yes, you did.
And all of his stuff. I read it, again, happens a little bit after, or well after, I want to say, the events of Jason Aaron's run. I want to say I read Thor the Devourer King by Donny Cates. And the Devourer King centers around Thor at a time where he has finally ascended the throne of Asgard.
Okay.
So Loki has also ascended the throne of Jotunheim. So he's basically Frost Giant King, because he's technically Frost Giant, spoilers. And Thor is obviously king of the Asgardians. So he's there, he's partying. Well, he's trying to, not party too hard. Sif, by the way, and this it's so really fun. Not too spoiler, because this is the exposition. Sif is actually took Heimdall's role right now. Heimdall, who used to be able to see into every world and open the Bifrost and all that stuff. That's Sif now, and Sif still isn't taking any crap from King Thor. I say King Thor because he doesn't want to, he doesn't want to be king. He doesn't. He's scared that he's like any Asgardian or any Viking to die in his sleep. While the other younger ones sort of do battle. That's not his whole thing. And so on the day that he's supposed to, address the people, Galactus's near dead body falls in the middle of Asgard. Okay. For those of you who don't know, Galactus is giant. He's known as a giant celestial being. Sure. And he eats. He's called the eater of the devourer of worlds. He eats planets, basically. That's his deal. He just consumes planets, and he has heralds like the Silver Surfer. For those of you who watched that Fantastic Four movie from ages ago, before they thought good writing wasn't needed, at the time to make superhero movies. And so that was it. He basically says, Thor, you're needed on this thing. I came here for a couple of reasons. And so there is something after Galactus. The fact that something is hunting some creature of that size. Scary. So I actually enjoyed this profusely. I actually recommend it as a standalone. It almost doesn't matter. I feel like it's canon. Because I'm so out of the loop when it comes to the main Avengers storylines. I don't really follow all of the Marvel comics, even if technically, thanks to Marvel Unlimited, you have all of them. Well, not all of them, but enough.
Most of them.
Most. Literally 90% or some such. I don't follow it, but I do. For those of you who are Thor fans, I do recommend it, because this is Thor as king, and he's like, "Oh, one last mission. Let me tell." And then, of course, Sif is like, "What are you?" And he's like, "Give me a minute." And so that
sounds like
I can almost summarize. I could totally act this thing out, but we don't do spoilers on this channel, but we do in the podcast. So tune into that once we start doing that again. Thanks to me, who's been delaying it. But the idea of this is highly much recommend this Thor this to any Thor fans. It puts him in a place where you are reminded, oh boy, he is a hero in his own right, and a god amongst gods, a god's god. All right, now to our last sort of part of this, what we read. I am finally going to give my hot take on Alexander Brecken's lore.
Out in January 5th to be precise.
And boy oh boy, I have loved Alex Bracken from The Darkest Minds, which Alexa was like, you should totally do this. And we went to the screening, and it was cool, and I wanted to read the books all the way up to the screening.
And you did.
And I did. It was great.
You read Legacy?
I read Legacy, which was also awesome. There is a kiss in that book that is
still one of the best
ever sci-fi, paranormal, non-contemporary kisses ever in the history of kisses. So obviously a fan of Alex Bracken's work. I have yet to do the crossbreeding stuff, but lore, I find, is a testament to how really good a writer Alex Bracken is. Like, in terms, like, I feel like in the writing, and so some of you have seen Alexa's reviews. I don't really want to add too much of that. I just kind of want to sing the praises of, this is why she's a professional writer. You know what I mean? And there's so many folks that are published out there, and people have different opinions about them, but I feel like I am going to be one of those people who are like, which authors do you think are awesome? And in this case, who would you like to be when you grow up? That would have to be Alex Bracken, I think. And it feels like she enjoyed the heck out of writing this book. She did. Because you can almost, and even as a sort of like a writer or aspiring writer myself, you can almost sort of tell when somebody's like really into sort of like what they do, when they lean into it. And not just because they're talented, but because the piece actually mattered to them. And you can see all of those, well, again, I'm just projecting. I don't know Alex, but you can see all. If my theory is correct, and maybe someday I'll find out, you can see the hallmarks of all of that enjoyment and talent, and just that beautiful mix of, I had an awesome idea, I totally know how to pull it off, and when I did, I didn't think it was going to be like this, and I like it even more than I thought that I ever would, and that's it. And the story is about Melora, who is, well, people call her Lore. She's recovering from a personal family tragedy that she had thought she has put away, but comes back to haunt her, because guess what? You can't escape the fact that you are part of a clan who, among many clans, were tasked by Zeus himself to hunt down some renegade gods who have been cursed to mortality every X number of years, 7 years, and any humans who have been tasked to join this kind of Hunger Games. It's called the Aegon, yes, but what is the Aegon?
It's like a tournament.
It's like a tournament where you basically hunt the gods, and if you kill them, you get to take on their immortality, whoever it was that killed them, and then you get to use that immortality for the sake of your clan.
Yep.
And there have been gods that have been killed, gods that have been not killed, and Laura was just trying to get away from all of that because her family died a terrible, terrible way until she couldn't escape it. People from her past that she thought were also dead had come back to screaming life, throwing everyone's worlds into complete disarray. And it's a great adventure. Just the very lore of these, gods being hunted, and these new gods taking on these old deities sort of things. The old gods in hiding and outsmarting the humans, and this Aegon happening just within the span of about a week, about 8 days.
It's like
right?
7 days.
7 to 8 days, thereabouts. It's such good lore, mixed with such amazing world building, and I would like to think also good characters, right? I enjoyed Melora's character a lot. I enjoyed the people that she ended up either, having from the start or eventually reconnecting with. I agree with Alexa that the ending was kind of a little abrupt, I think, but only if you want to look at it that way. Like, you could
it's still a good ending.
It's still a good ending, but at the same time, you're like, I want more. And I feel the abruptness is just because you want more, not so much that because it didn't.
Not so much because it's
actually like too short. Like, no, but like it was sort of leading up to that. You were sort of hoping what is going to happen now, and then just beautifully sort of like a sudden but not too sudden end. And I think that, again, testament to Alex's writing. I want to be her when I grow up. Basically, that's what this book has. If there's anything I can take away from this book apart from a great story, is that's who I want to be, basically. All right, so that's pretty much that.
Wow, this video was filled with like a lot of high notes. Huh?
A lot of high notes, a lot of waxing. Insert.
Well, not so much poetic.
Esoteric.
As just like
other big words that you can.
Fandom-y? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
a lot of gushing, I want to say, would be a good.
Anyway, we've come to the end of this particular What We Read video. We hope you enjoyed watching it. If you have any thoughts or any questions, leave us comments down below, and we'll do our best to respond. And we will see you guys next week for another video. Bye.